Now that the threat of Judgment Day has come and gone, the mutants of Krakoa can redouble their efforts to dealing with the Children of the Vault. What'll happen next? Well, let's hop into the pages of X-Men issues number 15 to 17 as we get all caught up, shall we? So then, as we join this three-part story, Forge and Cyclops are trekking their way through the jungle. You'll remember that Cyclops only wanted Forge on this brand new incarnation of the X-Men team, so that he could keep an eye on him in any sort of secret, dirty projects that he might be working on for Xavier and the Quiet Council. Projects like, for example, how Forge plans to deal with the Children of the Vault should they ever escape. You'll recall that the Children of the Vault are the superpowered post-humans who make their home in a dimension where time moves differently than it does out here in our world, meaning that they are incredibly advanced and incredibly hostile to mutant kind. Forge's plan to keeping them in their place is, well, basically pointing a giant gun at the door that shoots black holes. Understandably, Scott is pretty horrified by this revelation. He's been striving as hard as he can to try and have mutant kind rediscover their kinder, gentler side, that they all seemingly lost with the resurrection protocols in Krakoa, so the idea that Forge basically built a giant genocide gun isn't sitting well with him. Forge defends himself by saying that as bad as this is, it's a lot better than the alternative. What is the alternative? Well, it's at that point the Children of the Vault break out and murder both Scott and Forge. We see that after the last excursion into the Vault, the Children have become even more powerful. Krakoa falls a day later, and after that, the Children move on to killing the Fantastic Four and the Avengers, who don't stand a chance. It's the magical characters of the Marvel Universe, Doctor Doom, and the like, who hold out the longest, but even they too end up getting absolutely swept by the Children, who, after they've become bored of conquering Earth, decide to go to Asgard and kill the Norse gods. Well, I guess that's the end of the story then, huh? And the end of everything. Geez, this one was short, unexpected, but pretty good. Of course, this isn't what really happens. This is only a simulation of what would happen should the Children of the Vault actually end up escaping. Scott and Forge did go to the jungle to check on the Vault. That much of the story is real, but Forge didn't build a giant black hole gun to keep them in. Instead, what he opted to do was build a giant dome that would trap any would-be escaping Children of the Vault in a Matrix-style hallucination wherein they actually did believe themselves to have killed all the X-Men and conquered the universe. Whether or not having your minds trapped in a simulation is better or worse than full-out genocide is up for debate, of course. But why, you might be asking, is the X-Men team actually here and now today? Well, it seems that they're working on settling some old business. You'll remember a few arcs back now, Sync, X-23, and Darwin had gone into the Vault. Laura died, Sync was changed forever, and Darwin was actually lost on the other side. The X-Men had no actual plan to rescue him until right now. With a bunch of the Vault's heaviest hitters pacified right now, Forge plans to make an excursion into the Vault to get Darwin back, and to do this, he's built himself a fancy new suit. It's another biomechanical marvel made up of DNA from several mutants. While wearing it, he can shape-shift like Mystique, keep himself safe from the dimension's strange passage of time like Tempo, and even track down mutants with the power of Caliban. Forge will have to go in on his own, though, as he could only make one suit, meaning that everyone else is going to be left watching the door and making sure that nothing else comes out. So yeah, basically what this arc is one giant Forge focus piece, something we honestly haven't had in this Krakoan era, which is surprising considering that he is such a big part of Krakoa as a society. He's the man who builds all the wonders and works all the science. As we discover too, he's actually striving for more. He has a complete vision of what a fully realized Krakoa could be, a city that would rival even New York in its size and majesty. And as a scientist and an inventor, he's willing to do just about whatever it takes to make this dream a reality, even if that means breaking bread with Xavier and carrying out some of his darker errands, or even trading sensitive blackmail information with Mr. Sinister in exchange for the DNA he needs to make his living suit. Again, like Beast and the others, is Forge being corrupted by Krakoa and his own unfiltered search for scientific advancement? Or do his darker ends justify his better means? That's kind of the major thrust of the story. There's also a really fun and hard-working B-plot in this story too, involving the Summers brothers. You'll remember Cyclops didn't exactly want Havoc joining his new version of the team, and the only reason Alex got recruited in the first place is, well, because Forge didn't want to be on the team in the first place, and he figured a good way to stick it to Cyclops was to get his idiot brother on the team. And yeah, once the very sensitive sensitive Alex realizes that he's on the team basically as a joke, he ends up freaking out. Of course, in the end, Havoc and Cyclops are forced to put their differences aside just long enough so they can defeat Para, one of the children of the Vault who manages to break out of his Matrix-style tube. The X-Men really have no choice but to put him back under the simulation's control, something that Alex doesn't like because, well, Havoc knows a thing or two about having your brain messed with. Now, with the help of Caliban, Forge is actually able to make his way deeper and deeper inside the Vault. The plan is to spring Darwin, who is still alive, and hope to God that the children of the Vault haven't been able to unlock the true potential of his ability to adapt and survive in any situation. Here's the problem though, once Forge actually manages to zero in on the signal he's been chasing all this time, he pops open one of the children's own cryo chambers and ends up getting one hell of a surprise. You see, it's not actually Darwin at all he finds, instead it's old lady Laura Kinney. Yes, that's right, X-23 didn't actually die at the end of her last mission, meaning that for the first time ever the mutant resurrection protocols have run into a real problem, and that is they now have two doubles. You'll remember that this version of Laura led a whole life for hundreds of years inside the Vault with Sync. Sync actually didn't even come along on this mission to the Vault because, well, it was just all too painful for him. But once things end up going all sideways with Pero, he ends up getting a distress call from Jean to come and help, which he is more than quick to do. This major revelation also puts Forge at a real moral crossroads right now. He only came in to spring Darwin because it's what his paymasters asked for and because it would offer a tactical advantage. He actually wants to leave her behind, but it's the Caliban face in his suit that actually starts talking to him and reprimanding him for his use of his abilities to track, saying that people are always misusing his abilities and that it really gets to him. Before Forge can properly decide what course of action to take next, he ends up getting ambushed by a rather familiar face. It's the silvery Serafina, everybody, a character who I couldn't blame you if you don't remember we've actually seen before in this Krakoan era. She was the Vault child who was actually being experimented on by the agents of Orchis. The X-Men had sprung her when they liberated a bunch of other mutants. Of course, in her time, that was maybe hundreds of thousands of years ago, but she never forgot it. She beat up Forge and gave him a good stabbing, but she actively opts not to kill him or even raise the alarm, saying that the mutants had saved her once upon a time and now she's paying that goodwill forward, if only to see what will happen. Mostly what ends up happening is Forge passes out from blood loss, but when he wakes up though, he's in his idealized version of Krakoa with all of his technological advancements. This isn't actually a dream, however, it's actually a psychic projection put into his mind by none other than Darwin, who is alive and well within the Vault. As Darwin explains, the children of the Vault tried to take him apart, tried to find out the secrets of his ability to adapt, but guess what? He was more powerful than he thought and was able to adapt his way out of death. He ended up being able to upload his entire mind into the children of the Vault's machine, essentially making him a digital ghost. At first he was a little bummed about losing his physical form, but now he's been living so long inside this digital space he's ascended to a higher level of being. In fact, when given the choice of going back to Krakoa, he opts not to take it. He wants to stay inside the Vault and see what amazing life he'll evolve into next in this space, implying that the next time the mutants see him, he may very well be some sort of digital god. This also means that Forge's new course of action is obvious, and that is to leave with old lady Laura and return back to Krakoa. Which he does, meaning that Sync and his Laura, who he fell in love with over those hundreds of years, are finally actually reunited with one another. It's a very sweet conclusion to this story. Though I'm certain once the Quiet Council finds out that they've got doubles of mutants running around, this isn't the last we've heard of this story either. Now, as this story and this arc comes to an end, Forge decides to have a drink at Blob's Tiki Bar with the newly resurrected Caliban, choosing to tell him the story of what happened to the two inside the Vault and how Caliban's powers were actually used for good for once. And so that was X-Men issues number 15 to 17, everybody, and I gotta say, I really ended up enjoying this story. In fact, I probably enjoyed it more because I got to read it all in one sitting for a change. Duggan paints probably one of the most fascinating portraits of Forge, a character who I never really gave that much credit in the greater X-Men mythos, but here it actually shows that he has a lot of depth to him. He's a scientist and an inventor. He doesn't think much of his own actions in terms of good or evil. He just sees himself as a man who works with with tools and solves problems, even if those solutions sometimes end up being absolutely horrifying. Here, though, going into the vault actually forces Forge to meet his own life choices head-on. And despite what Cyclops might think, Forge actually does still know what is right and what is wrong. It just took him a little while to get there. Overall, I'd give this one a very positive 8 out of 10. This is a good read and shows that even after Judgment Day and even after everything else, the X-Men family of books still has a lot of gas left in the tank and a lot of cool stories left to tell.
Hey there everyone, it's your old pal Cape Joel again, thanking you so much for watching to the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, why not check out my Amazon link down in the description. Yes, that's right, the Cape Joel channel officially has its own Amazon storefront now. You can pick up a comic or anything else for that matter, and if you did, you'd really be helping me in the channel. So with that out of the way everyone, I will see you again next time. Bye-bye.